I will say good morning. It is a schos bakshna with all of you. I'm sorry that I can't be there in person. I bakshna out of town at a family simcha, but didn't want to miss the opportunity to Miras Hashem do these beautiful gemaras together with everyone. So today's daf is daf Yud. We are picking up on the bottom of Testament base, 10 lines up from the bottom. But Rabbi Yitzchak, my dichsiv. What's the meaning of the pasuk that says Rodef tzedakah v'chassid yimatzei chayim tzedakah v'kavod? So the Gemara says, what does this mean? Mishum de Rodef tzedakah yimatzei tzedakah. What does that mean? If you run after tzedakah, you'll find tzedakah. What is the meaning of the pasuk? El lomer lecha is very beautiful. Kol rodef achar tzedakah. Whoever runs after opportunities to perform tzedakah, Kadosh Baruch Hu mamtzi lo ma'os v'oseh b'hain tzedakah. So this is beautiful. If you run after opportunities to do tzedakah in life, Kadosh Baruch Hu will make sure that you have money and opportunities to be able to do it. In other words, this is part of the overarching motif of B'derech she'adam rotze leilech molichin oso. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees what path we want to take in life, and He helps us along that path. So if a person says, you know what, I want to be about tzedakah, I want to be the kind of person that's there for others, to help others, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will say, okay, if that's what you want, I'll help you get there. I'll give you the necessary funds in order to be able to give tzedakah. Excuse me. And I will give you the beautiful opportunities as well. Excuse me. So Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak says, furthermore, Kadosh Baruch Hu make sure that the opportunities are the right opportunities, that the people you give tzedakah to are indeed people who are deserving of the tzedakah. So the Gemara says, what does this come to exclude? The Darsh Rabbah might dichsiv v'yu muchshalim lefanecha ba'is habcha seibahem. Amram Yirmiyah Kadosh Baruch Hu. Yirmiyahu Hanavi said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in the moment when Yirmiyahu Hanavi was very upset with Klal Yisrael, he said, Ribono shel olam afilu b'shah shekofenes yitzran umevakshen lasos tzedakah. So Yirmiyahu Hanavi was so disenchanted and so upset with Klal Yisrael. He says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even when Klal Yisrael wants to give tzedakah, now again, if you look at the lashon over here, the way Yirmiyahu Hanavi phrases it, he says, Hashem, even when they are able to subjugate their inclination, kolfen es yitzran. This goes back to what we spoke about in yesterday's daf, the idea that tzedakah is incredibly hard, because number one, it forces a person to be selfless, when more often our default position is being selfish. And number two, it takes my money, which is incredibly important to me, which I work so hard for, and forces me to share it with others. So there literally is like a subjugation of the Yetzer that has to take place in order for me to give tzedakah. So Yirmiyahu Hanavi says, even HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when your children give tzedakah, nevertheless, again, Kadosh Baruch Hu, don't give them schar. In other words, put in front of them unworthy individuals. People are collecting tzedakah but don't really need the money, or for some unworthy cause. So this way, again, they won't, Klal Yisrael, when they give the mitzvah, they won't even get the mitzvah of tzedakah. Yirmiyahu was so disgusted with Klal Yisrael that he says to Kadosh Baruch Hu, essentially, even if they want to perform a mitzvah, don't enable them, don't allow them to do it. Which, by the way, opens the door to a different discussion about the nature of what happens if a person gives tzedakah to someone and it turns out that the person unfortunately was dishonest. Do I, the giver, still perform the mitzvah? Have I fulfilled the mitzvah of tzedakah, even though at the end of the day the money has not reached a meaningful source? This is a discussion on the poskim. It seems from here from Yirmiyahu Hanavi, the answer to that would be no, because he says again, Kadosh Baruch Hu, don't allow their tzedakah to reach the hands of meaningful or genuine people, which sounds like, again, they'll give it to dishonest people, and then it turns out they haven't performed the mitzvah of tzedakah. Okay, Rabbi Shmuel Silber. So we'll say, so again, but just this takeaway over here, that when a person is rodef achar tzedakah, a person runs after tzedakah, wanting to do tzedakah, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I see what you're running after. I see what you want. I'm going to help you get there. I'll give you the money. I'll give you the opportunities. And again, that model is such a profound life model, not just for tzedakah, but for anything in life. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, at the end of the day, sees what do we run after. And again, sometimes if I'm running after the wrong things, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not going to help me along that way. But if I'm running after the right things in life, if I'm running after the good things in life, then b'derech she'adam rotze leilech molichin oso, the pathway that I choose for myself, HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps me along that path. And as long as it's a good path, a holy path, a meaningful path, the Ribono shel olam will be there to assist me every step of the way. Rabbi Shmuel Silber Amar kol haregel lasot tzedakah zocha havyon lo bonim ba'alei chachma ba'alei osher ba'alei agad. This is beautiful. So Rabbi Shmuel Silber says like this: if a person is rogel lasos tzedakah, now the lashon over here is very interesting. Rabbi Shmuel is not just talking about someone who just gives tzedakah, but rogel. Rogel means habituated. Person gives on a constant basis tzedakah. the key to success in Ruchnius is, anyone could have like an episodic moment, an episodic burst of beautiful, luminescent spiritual energy. But that's not Yiddishkeit. Yiddishkeit is regilos. Yiddishkeit is habituation. Yiddishkeit is day after day. Yiddishkeit is continuity. Yiddishkeit is eish tamid tukabo, a constant and consistent fire. So Rabbi Shmuel Levi says it's not really a din in how much tzedakah you give, but it's a din in how often you give that tzedakah. Are you ragil? Are you ragil? Does a person constantly and consistently give tzedakah? So a person who is ragil to go ahead and give tzedakah, having labanim baalei chachma, he has sons who possess wisdom, who are wealthy, and are baalei agoda. Now this is interesting. Baalei agoda means that they're masters of agarata. All right, so the Gemara says baalei chachma, dichsev, top of yud, yimatzei chaim. Baalei osher dichsev tzedakah. I'm sorry, baalei osher dichsev tzedakah. Baalei agoda dichsev v'kavod. So we'll say, so again, I understand the wisdom piece. I understand the wealth piece, because again, give tzedakah, you'll get the money back. Right? So wisdom and wealth, and what does it mean agarata? So Rashi says over here, it's very interesting. Rashi says that people who are experts in agarata, they get a lot of kavod. It's interesting. Why do they get a lot of kavod? Because people like agarata. So if you could help make agarata something meaningful, something special, something inspirational, such a person like that is Rashi says, is moshchines halev. He draws on the hearts of people. So a person who goes ahead and gives tzedakah will have sons who possess wisdom, who possess wealth, and are baalei agarata. So I'm saying, if you think about it, by the way, you give tzedakah to someone, you give them life. You give tzedakah, especially if we give tzedakah in the way that we spoke about before, with a smile and with relationship, and with faisa, with dvarim, with proper words. So you give a person that, you give them life. Someone Baruch Hu says, so if you habituate yourself to engage in tzedakah, I'll give you life, I'll give you children, and those children will be so well-rounded. They'll have wisdom, so they'll have the halacha, they'll have the agarata, the hashkafa, they'll have ruchnius, and they'll also have gashmius. It's beautiful. So the Gemara goes, Sivasam kavod chacham mincha. Tanya, Hayre Meir Omer. Sorry, we're going quickly through some of these drashas just because of the length of the daf. Tanya Meir Omer. Yesh lo lebaladin lahashiv chavalomar lacha. Incredible Gemara. So Rabbi Meir said like this: if an apikore, someone who doesn't want to believe, if he wants to poke a hole in our theology, here's how he could do it. It's not a true poking of a hole, but if somebody wanted to, here's what they could say: Im elokechem ohivaniemu mipnei ma'inu mafarnasin. Person could say an apikores, an unbeliever, an agnostic, and an atheist could say, if your God loves the poor so much, then why doesn't he take care of them? If Rabbi Baruch Hu loves Klal Yisrael so much, so why not take care of the poor? So Amar Lo, so now Rabbi Meir says you could respond to him, Kidei, Sheinatza Anu Bahen Medina Shal Gehenim. This is incredible. Rabbi Meir says, in order that we, the giver, should be saved from Gehenim. Or in other words, sometimes the poor are the enablers for the rest of us to be able to save ourselves. That in life, I may be lacking something, and in life, I may be deficient in an area. And when there is another Jew in need, and I could give that person, so suddenly again, that person, the recipient, is the enabler for my growth. You see, we often think that in the realm of tzedakah, the giver is like the more powerful party, and the recipient is the less powerful party. But in fact, Rabbi Meir says it's not true. The receiver is the enabler, the recipient is the enabler for the donor's growth. I have someone to give to, and therefore I have the ability to grow and to transcend. It's almost as if the Beis Halevi brings down, he says, the ani, the pauper, is like an esrog, right? If you think about it again, like an esrog is an object, right? An esrog doesn't do anything, but yet the esrog is the vehicle through which I perform and I fulfill my mitzvahs, and I achieve a transcendent state. So too, the ani, the poor person, he's the esrog. He's the vehicle. He's, so to speak, the object of the mitzvah through which the rest of us are able to grow. The rest of us are able to transcend. We're able to become less selfish and more selfless. We're able to stop focusing on ourselves and focus on others, all because of the ani. Therefore, Meir says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu could take care of the ani, but if Hashem would take care of the ani, He would deprive us of the opportunity to be able to grow and to transcend as individuals. It's incredible. And Turnus Rufus, one of the Roman officials, prominent Roman officials, who helped destroy the Beis Hamikdash, So he asked this question of Rabbi Akiva. He says, if your God loves the poor, why doesn't he take care of them? Amarle, Rabbi Akiva responded, because this way, again, we are saved from Gehenna. Rabbi Akiva said that through the poor becomes the poor become the object, essentially, of our transcendence. Through them, we are able to grow. It's again, it's one of these things in life. No one would ever ask to be poor so that they could be the vehicle of someone else's growth. But as we all know, HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't ask us which role we'd like in life. So we're placed into the role. But it's important for us to understand sometimes when we're giving, we think we're doing the ani a favor. What we don't realize is, first of all, I'm not doing any favors. I'm performing the mitzvahs of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm doing what I'm commanded to do, what I'm supposed to do. That's number one. But number two, it's important to be makir, important to recognize that the ani is not just taking. The ani is doing something for me. The ani is transforming me into a giver. And by transforming me into a giver, I become a different kind of person. Incredible. So Turnus Rufus says, well, one second. Essentially, if HaKadosh Baruch Hu made someone poor, then what right do we have to help him? In other words, obviously Hashem decreed that a person should be poor. So maybe we should say like this: if Hashem wanted you to have money, He would have given you money. If He didn't give you money, He doesn't want you to have it, and therefore I shouldn't intervene. He says, let me give you a mashal. Like a king of flesh and blood, who incarcerated one of his servants. And the king commanded, no one is allowed to give this prisoner any food or any clothing, any food or any drink. Someone came along and gave food and drink to the prisoner. When the king hears about this, the king is going to get upset. The king is going to say, I ordered no food and drink to the prisoner. So what right do you have to start giving food and drink to the prisoner? And Turnus Rufus says, Rabbi Kiva, you are called servants to Hashem. Kili b'nei Yisrael avodim. So Turnus Rufus says, really, what right do you have to help the poor? Is that not sharing? Is that not undermining the divine plan? This is incredible. Rabbi Kiva says, no. Rabbi Kiva says, let me give you a different mashal. The Melech Basra v'dam shekas al beno. V'chavash v'veis hasurin. V'tziv alav shol la'achilo v'shol la'ashkoso. To a king who got angry at his son. The king got so angry at his son that he incarcerated him. And he commanded that no one's allowed to give the son food or drink. And someone came along and gave the son food and drink. So, when the king hears that someone gave his son food and drink, as much as that was done in violation of the king's decree, but the king is happy. Why is the king happy? Someone took care of his son. And Rabbi Akiva says, and Rabbi Akiva says, we are called sons of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So you're right. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made us poor. Right? He might have incarcerated, so to speak, some of us, put us in difficult situations. But then when someone comes along and helps out the son of the king is so happy. Rabbi Akiva says, that's why, again, when we give tzedakah to each other, ultimately, again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu couldn't be happier. So Turnus Rufus says back, Atem kriyim banim kriyim avodim. So ultimately, again, you're called sons and you're called servants. So Turnus Rufus picked up on this dialectic, these two different types of relationships that we have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're servants and we're sons. Bisman she'atem osim ritzono shel makom atem kriyim banim. So when you fulfill the will of God, you're called sons. Or bisman she'ein atem osim ritzono shel makom atem kriyim avodim. When you don't fulfill the will of God, you're servants. V'achshav in atem osim ritzono shel makom. Turnus Rufus says, look, we the Romans, we're ruling over you. So clearly now you are not fulfilling the word of God. So if you're not fulfilling the word of God, Harehu Omer, right? So if you're not fulfilling the will of God, then you're a servant. If you're a servant, Turnus Rufus says, my mashal, my parable is better than your parable. So really, what right do you have to go ahead and help each other? Perhaps it even contravenes the actual will of God. So Amarlo Harehu Omer, Halo Paros Rav Lachmecha Va'aniyim Merudim Tavi Bayis. So the Rebbe Kiva quoted the pasuk, "Aniyim merudim tavi bayis." When will literally again the marauders, right? The aniyim merudim, literally again the despicable paupers, which is a reference to Rome. He didn't say it Rome explicitly, but when will the negative forces devolve upon you? So the Gemara says, So Rabbi Kiva quoted this pasuk that said that no matter what happens, right, even if at the end of the day you are ruled over by other people, and even if therefore again it's more of a relationship of avadim to Hashem than banim to Hashem, Rabbi Akiva says we still have an obligation to help each other out. Incredible. Of course, again, the Gemara doesn't say the turnus rufus, accept it, not accept it. The truth is the world never understood and never will understand the relationship we have to each other. Never understands the power of Achdus, never understands the power of Jewish unity, never understands how people who could sometimes hate each other so much could love each other without boundaries. This is what Rabbi Akiva was trying to explain to Turnus Rufus, to the point, by the way, that even if it would go against the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kiviyachol to help each other, we would still do it. We'd still do it because the need, and again, I mean that metaphorically, but the need to go ahead and help each other out is so profound and so ingrained within us. Whether we're banim, whether we're avodim, we always look out for each other. Darash Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shalom, Kishem Shem is also Shalom K'tulam Rosh Hashanah. So we actually referenced this in yesterday's daf. The same way that a person's livelihood is fixed from the beginning of the year. We'll say first of the widest lines. So too, how much money a person is going to lose throughout the year is also fixed. So the Gemara says, Zacha, halo paris lo zacha va'aniyim merutim tavi bias. If you're zocha, the loss, so to speak, will be in tzedakah. If you're not zocha, you're just going to lose the money some other way. In other words, it's the same way that parnasa is decided and fixed at the beginning of the year. The amount of money that you're quote-unquote going to lose is also fixed and decided. The difference is you have the choice. Do you quote-unquote lose it by giving it away willingly to tzedakah, or is it taken from you? So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had a dream. And in his dream, ultimately, again, he saw that literally the sons of his nephews were going to suffer a loss of 700 zuz that year. Ashinu shakal minay tzedakah. So what he did is he ended up taking money from them for tzedakah. So he pushed them, and get more and more tzedakah. At the end of the year, posh gabahu shivsar dinari. So there were 17 dinarim left. So again, he had taken from them, 683 dinarim, and there were 17 dinarim left. Kimata mali yom kippur shadar bekeisar nakte. When Erev Yom Kippur, who knocked on the door, the tax collector from the Caesar, how much money did he take? 17 dinarim. Amrlu Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai lo techtalon shivsar dinari gabaychu shavkinhu minaychu. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said he saw that his nephews were nervous. They were nervous that maybe the Caesar was going to take more money. He said, don't worry about it. That's all they're taking from you. Amrlu. So the Gemara says, Amri le minaya data. He said, uncle, how do you know that they're only taking 17 dinarim? Amrlu chalmo chazai. I saw in a dream. And in my dream, I saw that this year you're going to lose 700 zuz. So this is it. Now you've quote unquote lost the 700 zuz. Amrle va'amaylo amratlan. Then he said, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you tell us? And had you told us, we would have given away the tzedakah, again, of our own volition. Beautiful. This is beautiful. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, I wanted it to be that when you gave tzedakah, you did the mitzvah l'shma. You did the mitzvah for the sake of the mitzvah. Had you known you were going to anyway lose 700 zuz, you wouldn't have had the same kavanah for the mitzvah. The fact that when you gave tzedakah, you didn't know that you were going to lose anything, but you just gave it because you wanted to give it, that made the mitzvah even holier and more profound. Papa was walking up a flight of stairs, and he slipped and almost got very severely injured. So the Gemara says, So interesting. So Papa said, it's interesting. So he was saying, in life, nothing happens without a reason. And the truth is, everything that happens in life, both the good and the bad, should spark a cheshbon nefesh, just some type of inner contemplation or inner inventory. Now, again, doesn't mean that when something bad happens, it's because I've done something bad. No, we know there's a concept tzaddik toralo. Bad things happen to good people, just like good things happen to bad people. But lamaisa, what I do have to do is nothing is random, and therefore, when something does occur, I do need to figure out, introspect a little bit to try to see what's going on. So Rapapa almost fell down a flight of stairs and died. So he said, what is this? What is this? What's going on in my life? Perhaps this Hakadosh Baruch Hu was sending me a sign, because it's interesting. He says, I would have died I would have died like someone who goes ahead and is mechalel Shabbos, violates Shabbos, or does avodah zarah. So Rashi points out over here that for desecration of Shabbos and for avodah zarah is skila, stoning. The way skila works is first they throw you off a high roof, and if a person doesn't die, then they stone them. So Lamaisa, again, he felt like falling down the stairs was like almost like reminiscent of skila. So what did I do? What did I do wrong? Where did I go wrong that I would be potentially deserving of this? Suppose it's incredible. So it's also good to have a good friend. So Chia Barav says to him, Chia says to Papa, well, is it possible that maybe, obviously, he didn't desecrate Shabbos, he didn't worship Avodah Zarah. Maybe a poor person came to you and you didn't give him anything. Is that possible? When a person has an opportunity to give tzedakah, but literally again shields his eyes, pretends like he doesn't see, and ignores the opportunity. Wow. Failure to act upon an opportunity to give tzedakah. And I will say again, in all of these cases, how much, how little, that's all up to you. But a person comes and they're asking and they need, a person has to give, and a person shields his eyes and doesn't give, it's as if he's worshipping idolatry. Ksiv hacha, hishamar lecha pen yed davar im levavcha belial, o ksiv hasan yatsu anosha b'nei belial, ma lahalon avodas kochavim av kan avodas kochavim. So we'll say, so the point over here is, you see the same lashon of Belial without a yoke. You see it by tzedakah, failure to give tzedakah, and by avodah zarah. So you see from here that failure, right, pretending that you don't see the person, pretending you don't see the opportunity, is almost chas v'shalom tantamount to worshiping avodah zarah, and avodah zarah is chiyuv and skila, and therefore maybe Rav Papa, maybe the reason you almost fell down the stairs and died was because, which would have been a skila-like death, would be because maybe you go ahead, you ignored an opportunity to give tzedakah. Okay, so Papa doesn't respond. Papa doesn't respond, he just leaves it like that. But incredible. Tanya, I would both say, by the way, also, it's interesting, right? That what's a friend, right? A friend is someone who's going to help you also discover the imperfections within yourself. Right? In general, again, when somebody asks you why does something happen, the best thing to do is always to say, I don't know why HaKadosh Baruch Hu does things and how HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs his world. Because in truth is we don't know. We have no idea. But sometimes you have a good chaver who could help you work things through, to introspect a little bit. It's the greatest gift in life. Tanya, Rabbi Yosi, called tzedakah v'chesed she'yisrael osim b'olam hazeh, shalom gadol upraklitin gidolim bein Yisrael avim shvashan. It's so beautiful. Every act of tzedakah and chesed that we do in this world creates a great sense of peace and defense. Praklitin gidolim is like a praklit, is like a defending angel. Defense. Rashi said, Melile Yosher, advocacy. Advocacy is the better word. Gedolim between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As well say, every act of chesed and every act of tzedakah creates this incredible sense of advocacy and shalom between us and Hashem. It's what we spoke about in yesterday's daf as well. When the Ribono Shel Olam sees us taking care of each other, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is willing to overlook and to forget so much transgression. Shneimar Kamar Hashem al tavo beis marzach v'alteich lispod v'altanod lahem ki asafti yishloim eisa amazeh ve'esa chesed v'esarachim. Chesed, what's chesed? Zuk milas chasodim. Rachamim, compassion, zut tzedakah. Tanya, Rabbi Hudomer, kidola tzedakah shem kareves hasagula. Tzedakah is great. Tzedakah brings the geula closer. I both said this is incredible. Tzedakah brings Mashiach closer. That's it. Take care of each other. Achdus, shalom, kind words, a smile, love, all of these things, it brings Mashiach closer. So you look at this, right? What is tzedakah? All these different things that tzedakah does. I want to live a life of tzedakah. Shmuel Silber puts me on a particular path. Tzedakah goes ahead and creates advocacy, creates shalom. Tzedakah brings Mashiach. Shneimar ko amar Hashem shimu mishpat v'asu tzedakah ki krova Yeshua silavo v'tzidka si lehigalos. Hu hayomer, he used to say, Asar dvarim kashin nivru ba'olam. Rabbi Huda said, there are 10 hard things created in the world. Har, so the Gemara says kasha, so a mountain, for example, is very hard. Barzal mechatcho, so metal is able to cut through it. Barzal kasha, metal is hard. Or mifafo, the heat, fire, softens it. Or kasha, fire is very intense. Mayim mechabin also works, water extinguishes it. Mayim kashim, water could be very hard. So the Gemara says, avim sovlim osan, the clouds absorb it. Avim kashim, the clouds can be very strong. Ruach mifaz rasan, the wind scatters them. The Gemara says, ruach kasha, you can have a strong wind. Guf sovlos, yet the body is able to absorb it. Guf kasha, the body is hard. Pachad shovro, incredible. We'll say, what breaks the body? Fear. It's interesting, right? It's not sickness and it's not illness. What breaks a person more than anything in life is fear. Is fear. A person is fear something. Fear could literally, again, break the spirit of the individual. So what do you do for fear? This is incredible. Yayin mifigo. Wine takes away fear. Isn't that incredible? Right? And a little bit of wine kind of puts a person at ease, and the fear is able to dissipate. So the Gemara says, Yayin kasher, but wine can be a little bit difficult, especially if you drink too much. Shina mevachaso. So sleep softens the effect. Umisa kasha mikulam. The hardest thing in life is death. Right? The hardest reality we have to contend with in this world is mortality. So the Gemara says, Tzedakah matzeles min hamisa. And tzedakah is able to save one from death. So I will say you go through this whole progression of things, and at the end of the day, what's the thing that staves off, so to speak, or that softens the hardness of life? Tzedakah. Tzedakah matzil min hamisa. Tichsev utzedakah tatzil mimaves. As the pasuk says, that literally tzedakah saves a person from death. And I will say now in general, whenever you see it, there's of course literal stories of tzedakah saving people from death. But also remember, again, when we speak about life and death, remember, it also means like this, that sometimes a person could be alive and yet be dead. In other words, a person can be biologically very much alive, but if I lead a life that is totally selfish, egocentric, and self-centered, that's not a life. It's not a life. So I'm alive, a person can be organically, biologically alive. So tzedakah tatzil mimaves could also mean tzedakah saves you from being the walking dead. Tzedakah transforms you into a giver. Tzedakah transforms you, allows you to be a transcendent individual who doesn't just think about himself, who doesn't just think about his own life, his own needs, but allows me to focus on the other. It saves me. Tzedakah saves me from a life of death. Otherwise, without a tzedakah mindset, life becomes a hedonistic pursuit of personal pleasure. It's all about what I want, what I need, how I want it. And such a life like that, it's not life. That's death while being biologically or organically alive. Tzedakah tatzil mimaves could mean, of course, that tzedakah actually staves off the actual effects of death, but it could also mean that tzedakah allows you not to be the walking dead. Tzedakah also allows you to be alive, be truly alive, and not just biologically or organically alive. Incredible. Darsha Ritostai, Rabbi Yanai. Borei, Shlok Midas Basra Adam. See how Hashem is so different than man. So the Gemara says, Midas Basra Adam, Adam maybe Darn Godol Melech, Safik Mekablan also, Hameno, Safik Mekablan also, Hameno. You bring a gift to the king, maybe the king will accept it, maybe he won't. Furthermore, again, even if he accepts it, Safik Rapanem Melech, Safik Rapanem Melech, maybe you'll get to see the king, maybe you won't. However, Hashem is not like this. Adam no same Prutaliani. If a person literally gives a penny to the poor, such a person will be Zocha Meretz Hashem to see the Shechina itself. Shneimar ani b'tzedek achazeh panecha esba'a b'hakitz temunasecha. So we'll say, isn't this incredible? Person gives even a pruta of tzedakah to the Yomi Baruch who says, come in, and you get an audience with the king. Amar Rav Nachman. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Lazar Yohev pruta la'ani v'hadirmasi. This is beautiful. Rabbi Lazar, right after he would give tzedakah, he would daven. Or as he felt that after giving tzedakah was dafkan eis ratzon, a particular auspicious time to be able to daven, because since a person gives tzedakah, they get an automatic and immediate audience with the king, then it's an auspicious time to be able to daven. It's so beautiful. The Gemara says, that ultimately, through tzedakah, I will see your face. So I will say it's really an incredible idea. When you give tzedakah, you create an esratzon, an opportune time to be able to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and ask for what it is that you need. My esba ba'akitz temunasecha. What does it mean that literally again I'll be satiated ba'akitz temunasecha, like when I awaken to your image? This is beautiful. This is first the Talmidei Chachamim who give up a lot of sleep in this world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu masbian miziv hashchina li olam haba. I'll say this is beautiful. Talmidei Chachamim will give up sleep in this world. They'll give up rest and relaxation in this world. But in return, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give them the beautiful countenance, his own countenance in the world to come. I'll say, which is also like a tremendous model. Sometimes in life, what you give up in this world to further your spirituality, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give you back multifold Emirat Hashem in the world to come with true pleasure, with true enjoyment. The Ziv HaShechina, incredible. Am Rabbi Yochanan, Ma'idich Siv, Mal v'Hashem chonin dal. So we'll say, now this is incredible. What does it mean? That literally again, if one has compassion upon the poor, it's as if he has lent to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does that mean? In other words, if you give money to the poor, it's as if you've lent to God. If the pasuk wouldn't say it, it would be prohibited to say it yourself. What does it mean? I will say it's almost as if saying that when I give money to another Jew, it's almost as if I am a creditor to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Almost as if I've lent Hashem money. I do chesed for another Yid. It's as if now Hashem owes me something. I'm the lender to God, and He's the borrower. He has to pay me back. Incredible. So the Gemara goes right there. The Gemara says, "Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rami Ksiv lo yoel hon biyom evra utstaka tatzal mimaves." So literally again, wealth will not help on the day of Evra. Evra is a form of divine wrath. Utstaka tatzal, and tzedakah will save from death. Ksiv lo yoilu otzros rasha utstaka lo yoilu otzros lo rasha utstaka tatzal mimaves. So state tzedakah halal lamali. So why do I need two discussions of tzedakah? Achos, the Gemara says. One is to teach you that I will say tzedakah has a twofold power. Number one, that tzedakah has the ability to save me from an unnatural death, and tzedakah also has the ability to save me from Gehenna. Which pasuk is talking about Gehenna? Hahu dekasa be'evra. D'chsiv yom evra hayom hahu. What's the tzedakah that saves me from an unusual death? We'll say Yud Amid Beis 10b. So the Gemara says, what type of tzedakah ultimately saves me from a misa mishuna? So the Gemara says, nosna ve'eni adelimi nosna. We'll say, so the type of tzedakah, so just to point out over here, the power, and I apologize, I'm going through the psukim quickly, but the type of tzedakah ultimately, again, that goes ahead and tzedakah has two powers. Number one, it saves me from an unusual death, and number two, it goes ahead and saves me from Gehenna. So the Gemara says, by the way, which type of tzedakah, or I should say, in what manner of giving tzedakah are you saved from an unusual death? So the Gemara says, nosna ve'eni yodel means nosna. It means when you give and you don't even know who you're giving to. So the highest form of tzedakah is both the giver and the recipient don't know who the money is going to. The Gemara says, nosna ve'eni yodel means nosna, not ve'eni yodel means no tell us. So in other words, the giver doesn't know who he's giving to, and the recipient doesn't know who he is receiving from. Nosna ve'eni yodel means nosna. So again, you give and you don't know who you're giving to. Lafuki midemar ukva. So I will say this comes to exclude the Mar Ukva model of tzedakah. Mar Ukva used to deposit money at the doorstep of Aniyim, and then he would leave. So he knew who he was giving to, but the recipient, of course, did not know who they were getting from. So the Gemara says, "Not lavino dem minotla, lafuk min Rabbi Abba." So literally, again, the recipient knows, but the giver does not. This comes to exclude Rabbi Abba. Rabbi Abba would go ahead and, interestingly enough, he would place tzedakah money like on his back, and Aniyim would come and they would take money. They knew it was there. Was like a tzedakah pushka. The Aniyim would come and they would take money. So the Aniyim knew who they were getting from, but ultimately, again, Mar Ukva did not know who he was giving to. So both of these models of tzedakah are very profound, right? See, again, you have Mar Ukva and Rabbi Abba, right? So Mar Ukva is depositing the money by the doorstep, so the giver knows, recipient doesn't. Rabbi Abba is holding the money on his back, so the recipient knows, the giver doesn't. The Gemara just highlights those are beautiful. What's the highest level? The highest level is where the giver doesn't know the identity of the recipient, and the recipient doesn't know the identity of the donor. So the Gemara says, so what should you do? You give to a tzedakah fund. So when you give to a tzedakah fund, you give to a fund, so then of course, obviously at some point in time, someone's going to have to know who the money is going to. But the idea is you give to the fund, the administrator of the fund then disperses the funds, but this way the donor doesn't know the recipient doesn't know the donor, and there never has to be any level of awkwardness around the mitzvah of tzedakah. Incredible. So what should a person do if he wants to have sons? What should he do? Give a lot of tzedakah. So apparently giving a lot of tzedakah is a skula, ultimately again for having sons. Rabbi Shmuel goes in a different direction over here. He says that a man should put his wife in the right mood before the act of relations. That the act of intimacy with one's wife should not simply be transactional, but rather, again, there should be a build-up. The husband's obligation is to set the right setting, to create the right mood, thereby ensuring that his wife will enjoy the act of relations even more. Such a matzav like that ultimately, again, brings about sons. Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov Omer, lo yitin adam pruta la'arniki shel tzedakah. There's a lot to say about that also, just leaving aside the actual, just about the Judaic view of intimacy. And it's so important to understand that sometimes, like, we have this conception that the point of intimacy is for reproduction. While certainly, again, that's important, but intimacy is also an incredibly powerful tool in the building of relationship. But that's only if intimacy is done correctly. If intimacy becomes transactional, then it's not intimacy, then it's just physical gratification, then it could lead to feelings of objectification and could erode the fabric of a beautiful marriage. On the other hand, especially when the husband puts in the time to create the right mood and to create the right atmosphere and to make his wife feel beautiful and feel beloved, it could change the entire fabric of a relationship in such a beautiful and meaningful way. Okay, different shear. A person should not go ahead and give money to a tzedakah fund, unless, of course, the tzedakah fund is run by someone like Rabbi Hanina ben Shadjon. In other words, don't give money to a fund that is not administrated by a proper, upright, pious individual. So you're right, only give money. So again, the point over here, so on one hand, we're saying, better to keep everything anonymous, right? Donors shouldn't, or recipients shouldn't know donors. So therefore, give your money to a fund, let the administrator of the fund dispense the tzedakah. But only give your money to a fund if you're confident that the fund is run by someone who is honest and pious. Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Rebbe Shalom, he said to Kadosh Baruch Hu, Rebbe Shalom, B'ma tarum keren Yisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, how could Klal Yisrael be uplifted? What do we need to do in order to uplift Klal Yisrael? What's the secret to Klal Yisrael's success? So this is beautiful. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu responds, B'chisisa. Chisisa, of course, refers ultimately to the Machzah Shakel, Tzedakah. Tzedakah. Moshe Rabbeinu asks Kadosh Baruch Hu, what do we need to do to uplift Klal Yisrael, to keep them holy, to keep them happy, to keep them united, to keep them on the right path? Tzedakah, tzedakah, tzedakah. And again, it's important to say this. Remember, I think I mentioned this a day or two ago. Tzedakah never just means money, because what happens if a person doesn't have money, right? Like the Sfarim bring down, what did our ancestors do in the desert, right? How did they perform the mitzvah of tzedakah in the midbar, right? Because after all, again, there were no aniyim. Everybody had exactly what they needed. So how did you perform the mitzvah of tzedakah? And the answer is, they gave of their time, they gave of their selves, they gave of their skill sets, they gave of their smiles, they gave of their encouraging words. There are multiple ways to perform the mitzvah of tzedakah. It doesn't just have to be money. So it's important to understand whenever we speak about tzedakah, we're speaking about a model of selfless dedication and sacrifice for the other. That's what we're talking about. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what is the secret to Klal Yisrael's success? And the answer is kisisa, the answer is tzedakah. When we give to one another, sacrifice for one another, dedicate ourselves to one another, that's how Klal Yisrael succeeds. They asked Shlomo ben David, Shlomo Melech, right? How far does the power of tzedakah extend? Amar lahem, see what my father said. Pizar nasan le'avyonim, tzedkasa omedes la'ad, karno tarum bekavod. So ultimately, again, you see, we're focusing on that phrase, tzedkasa omedes la'ad. His tzedakah remains forever. That tzedakah is like an eternal zechus. Rabbi Abar mehacha hu meromim yishkon mitzaros. I'm sorry, Rabbi Gemara is quoting the pasuk. Hu meromim yishkon mitzaros slaim miskabol lachmoni tam meimav ne'emanim. Ma tam meromim yishkon. Why does a person merit to dwell in the heavens and the heights? The Gemara says, Mitzaros slaim miskabo mishum delachmo nasan umeimav ne'emana, because he shared of his bread, and ultimately, again, his word is a trustworthy. Once again, David HaMelech highlighting the incredible power and reward for tzedakah. Rabbi Abo, Shlomo, Ezu ben Olam Haba. Shlomo, who is a person who is a ben Olam Haba? What a question, right? Who is the person who gets Olam Haba? So the Gemara says, Amar lahem kol shegeneged zekinov kavod. So this is interesting. If you look at Rashi, Rashi says, Rashi is right across in Tosas El Yonim. Keneged zekin of kavod, osim shecholkilam kavod ba'olam hazeh, machmas chachmas ziknasam. So Shlomo said like this: if you find the person who is honored in his old age because of his wisdom, that is a person who has olam haba, which is interesting. So Shlomo says, So I think what it means is like this: like when we're young, so we're able to fool a lot of people, by putting on a good show. When you get older, and you don't have the same koach to put up the same facade that we do when we're young. The real me comes out. So if people still respect me because of who I am, because of the wisdom that I possess, because of the actions that I have done, that is generally the portrait of a good person, of a holy person. So Shalom Melech says, if you're older and you're respected for who you are, what you've done, and the wisdom you possess, then you are a Ben Olam Haba. Incredible. Kiyad the Yosef Bered Rabbi Yoshua Chalash. So Rabbi Yosef Bered Yoshua became ill. So the Gemara says, Ingid. So the is incredible. Ingid means like literally again, he went unconscious. Now it could also be that he died. He died. What happens? Amarle Avua, my chaza. So apparently again, he went unconscious, stopped breathing, and then he came back to life. So his father asked him, right? So this is Rabbi Yeshua, right? So Yosef was the son, Rabbi Yeshua was the father. Rabbi Yeshua asks his son, Amarle Avua, my chazis, what did you see for those few moments that you were in Olam Haba? What did you see? Amarle Olam Hafuch Reis. He said, Father, I saw an upside down world. What does that mean? There's incredible Gemara. Literally again, the Elyonim are the people ultimately again who are highly respected in this world, or all the way on the bottom of the world to come. Yet the people who are so often like marginalized, disregarded, overlooked in this world, they are the ones who occupy an exalted position in the world to come. Well, isn't that incredible? Because sometimes Olam Haba is the inverse of Olam Hazeh. In Olam Hazeh, we give people kavod for all types of meaningless, temporal, and fleeting reasons. So they get a lot of kavod. In Olam Haba, your kavod doesn't come from your possessions, and your kavod doesn't come from your money, and your kavod doesn't come from your accomplishments or your career accomplishments or your external factors of success. Could be career accomplishments are good, external metrics of success. In Olam Haba, your ranking and your standing depends on who you are, what you've accomplished in your life. So literally, again, Yosef says it's amazing. Like the people respected in this world really occupy a lower stature in the world to come. And the people who are often overlooked and marginalized in this world are the ones who are exalted in the world to come. Amar Lei, Rabbi Yeshua responds to his son, no, my son, you didn't see an upside down world. Olam bara ra'isa. You actually saw the world with complete clarity. And he said to my son, where are you? Well, it's just an incredible idea, right? Sometimes to think about like what we place importance on in this world versus what is actually important. So the Gemara says, and he asks his son, tell me, where were we? The Talmidei Chachamim, where were we in the world to come? So the Gemara says, listen to this, the same importance we have in this world, we have in the world to come as well. Incredible. V'shamati. Now Yosef goes on and he says, I heard a baskol come out and say, Ashrei mi shebalakan v'talmudo biyado. Praiseworthy is the person who comes to Olam Haba, v'talmudo, and his learning is in his hand. Now I will say, very often this is understood to mean that the power of chazar, the power of reviewing, that you could learn, but you don't necessarily have it in your hand. When you chazar and you learn and you own something, it's in your hand, which of course is beautiful. But for many of us in the Daf Yomi world, it sounds like a little bit defeatist, because after all, again, we do a lot of information, we do a lot, and sometimes retention is difficult. We definitely have to work on retention and work on chazara, but I think there's a different pshat in the phrase. Ashrei Bishabalkan after 120. We'll say, you know what happens after 120? When we go to Olam Haba, you know what happens? When you go to Olam Haba, you know what's going to happen? You're going to come up. And we'll say, you're going to need help with your baggage, but not the kind of baggage you think. Because you're going to come before the Ribono Shalom with every single mesechta that you've learned. V'talmudo biyado. Your Talmud. You're a Gemara. You're a Gemara. You're gonna be holding a Baba Metzira and a Baba Basra and a Baba Kama and a Sot and a Kiddushin and a Brachas and a Shabbos and a Erevin. And literally, again, I'm going to come before the Kisei HaKavod with every single volume of Shas that I have learned. And if you've gone through Shas more than once, you bring a separate volume for each time you've done it. I will say that's the great zechus we have in Daf Yomi every single day. Ashrei mi shebalakan is talking to us. Praiseworthy are we. Praiseworthy as we are we. Because after 120, we will come before HaKadosh Baruch Hu with tamudo biyado, holding each and every volume. And by the way, if you use Art Scroll, it's going to be ridiculous, because think about this: how many volumes per mesechta? I'd have to imagine what is Bava Basra. I don't have it on my shoulder. Bava, it's got to be probably 3-4 volumes. So every mesechta, right? Okay, so I'm going to come with one Bava Basra. But if you're going ahead and you're bringing the art, incredible. So that's what we have to look forward to in the Yom Hadin. how beautiful it will be to come before HaKadosh Baruch Hu with literally, again, wagon loads, or whatever they use in Olam Haba to transport stuff, of Gemaras piled high, representing all of the Masechtas that we have learned. Ashrei Mishe Balagan, praiseworthy is the person who comes to Olam Haba, V'Talmudo Biyado, and his Daf Yomi Gemaras are there with him, representing his incredible toil and accomplishment in Torah. Incredible. Let's go weiter. Furthermore, again, it says, Vishamati also heard that they say, Omrim Haruge Malchus Ein Kol Beria Yechol Olam B'Mechitzasan. Those who were killed by the monarchy, meaning those who are killed al Kiddush Hashem, no one is able to come in their specific place in Olam Haba. They have their own exalted space in which they exist in the Olam HaEmes that no one else is able to enter. Maninhu, by the way, who are these people who were killed by the government who died al Kiddush Hashem? So Ilan Rabbi Akiva, maybe it's Rabbi Akiva and the other Hasar Gerubachas, the other Hasar Aruge Malchus, the other martyrs. So the Gemara says, Mishma Aruge Malchus V'Sula. Rabbi Akiva is in Olam Haba anyway, right? Because of his learning, not just because he was killed al Kiddush Hashem. So the Gemara says, you're right. So Pshita B'Lav Hachinami Ella Haruge Lud. Rather, it's referring to the Jews of Lud. So Rashi points out over here, who are the Haruge Lud? Rashi says over here, Lulainus upapus achim shargam tunas rufas harasha. So we'll say, so there was an episode, the Gemara Maseches Taanis discusses that there was an episode that the daughter of the king was murdered. And the king threatened that if the murderers are not found, he was going to execute the entire city of Lud. So the Gemara says that two brothers took the blame. They did not commit the murder, but they took the blame in order to go ahead and save the rest of the residents of the city. So the Gemara says, Jews like this, who gave their lives al Kiddush Hashem. So again, they gave their lives for Am Yisrael, and for Eretz Yisrael. So I'll say those are Jews who have they occupy a different place in Olam Haba. And I'm both saying, it's so important for a Gemara like this now, because unfortunately, right, we are offering so many karbanos on the Mizbeach of Klal Yisrael. And the loss is so overwhelming, and the loss is so heartbreaking. Young, precious soldiers giving their lives, al Kiddush Hashem, every day. It's important for us to know that these neshamas go to a different place. These neshamas go to a place in Shemayim that even the greatest tzaddikim are, because they've given their lives for Am Yisrael and for Eretz Yisrael. I don't know that it gives a nechama to the mishpachas, but it's something at least for us theologically to hold on to, that these neshamas, the Jews who give their lives for the protection and safety of Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael, they have a different place in Olam Haba, a different place by the Shechina. Incredible. Tanya, Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai Tamidov. B'ni, Ma'u Shamar HaKasav Tzedakah Teramim B'Chesed L'Umim Chatos. So what's the meaning of this pasuk? What does it mean again? Tzedakah Teramim Goy, that tzedakah will uplift the nation. Eli Yisrael. This refers to the fact that the mitzvah of tzedakah uplifts Klal Yisrael. The Chsev. Because Klal Yisrael is called a guy, we're also called a nation. The chesed l'umim chatos, and literally I mean the chesed of the nations is a sin. What does that mean? Called tzedakah v'chesed she'umos ovdei gochalim osim chet hu lahem she'inan osim el hiskadlebo kimo shene'amar dai lahon ma'krivin nichosin le'lokash shmaya matzin lechayim malka ubenai da'avid hachi lav tzedakah. So I'm sorry. So we'll say it's good. So we'll say, what does it mean when it says that tzedakah is going to be a sin? They're first the nations of the world. The nations of the world do tzedakah. They don't do tzedakah for the right reasons. Rather, why are they doing tzedakah? They're doing tzedakah only for their own investment, only for their own gains. It's not being done l'shem shamayim, but rather, again, it's being done just for their own self-aggrandization. So the Gemara says, well, 1 second. The Gemara says, the Avid Hachi Lav Mitzvah Gemuri. But I understand when it comes to tzedakah, I thought tzedakah is one of those mitzvahs actually that even if you do it for the wrong reasons, it's still a mitzvah. After all, we learned V'atanyo ha'omer selo zel tzedakah b'shel sheyichya b'ni. If a person gives tzedakah and he says, I'm giving this tzedakah in order that my son will live. So I'm doing the mitzvah, but for a condition. For conditions, right? Reuven says, my son is ill, I'm giving this tzedakah on the condition that my son, it's not a mitzvah l'shma, I'm doing it for some type of gain. To which the Gemara says, Harizet tzaddik gamar. Such a person is absolutely righteous. To which the Gemara says, Lo kashya kan bi yisrael kan ba oved kochavim. The Gemara says it's not a kasha. One is talking about Jews, one is talking about non-Jews. Meaning what? Jews, when we give tzedakah, even if I'm giving it for a particular purpose, if the purpose doesn't materialize, I don't regret having done it. By the umos, all by the nations of the world, if they do something for a particular purpose and the purpose doesn't materialize, they regret having done it. So also such a fascinating idea. We're all motivated by something. So again, the Gemara is saying, if I'm motivated to do a mitzvah for some reason, okay, I'm doing it. Because at the end of the day, even if I don't get out of it what I wanted, I'm never going to regret serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, doing something for my people. Here lies the difference between the Jews and the nations of the world. Incredible. Good. Now Rabbi Shmuel Silber, Tzedakah Tromim Goy, Eli Yisrael. What does it mean? Tzedakah will uplift the nation. This refers to Klal Yisrael. T'chsev, Umikam Chai Yisrael Goy Echad. V'chesed l'umim chatos. And ultimately, again, the chesed of the nations will be sinful. What does that refer to? So the Gemara says, Kol tzedakah v'chesed shum. First the widest line, Rabbi said. First the widest line on 10b. Kol tzedakah v'chesed shumos ovdei kochavim osim chetu lahem shein osin ela kedei shetimshach malchusan. Again, the kindness, the act of tzedakah that the nations of the world do is sinful because they're only doing it in order to perpetuate their own reign. Right? They're not doing it for the right purposes, only to gain something from it, to perpetuate their reign. Shneimar lahen malka malki yishapra alayech v'chatach b'tzedakah u'prov v'avisech v'mechan inyanan hein tahavi arka l'shluseich. Now I'm going to Amar. Tzedakah T'ramim Goy. What is it when it says a tzedakah will uplift the nation? Elu Yisrael. This refers to Klal Yisrael. D'chsev umika amcha Yisrael v'chesed l'umim chatos. And what does it mean that the chesed of the nations of the world is a chatos? Called tzedakah v'chesed she'akum osin chetu lahen. All the tzedakah that the nations of the world do is really sin, is sinful. Why? Shein osin ela lihisyaher bo. Because ultimately, again, they only do it, it feeds an ego. They're giving in order to feed their ego, which fuels an arrogance. And whoever is arrogant, unfortunately, falls in Gehenna. Again, I will say that's much more of a cause and effect as well. When a person is arrogant, only thinks about himself, the only thing about myself is only a matter of time until I make the most egregious life mistakes, which chas v'shom land me in Gehenna. Shneimar zar zayd yoher leitz shmo ose be'evra zadon vein evra ela Gehenna. Shneimar yom evra yomahu. Okay, Amar Gamliel. We still need the opinion of Rabbi Elazar. What does he say? Rabbi Elazar Omer, Tzedakah T'ramim Goy, Tzedakah uplifts the nation. Who is that a reference to? Eli Yisrael. D'chsev, Umi ka'amcha Yisrael Goy Echad. The chesed l'umim chatos, and the chesed of the nations of the world will be a chatos. What does that refer to? The Gemara says, Kol tzedakah v'chesed she'akum osin chetu lahen shein osin ela lecharif osanu. All the tzedakah and the chesed nations of the world do, they only do in order to disparage us. In other words, the chesed that the nations of the world do, they don't do really to help. They just do to somehow try to make Klal Yisrael look worse. Shneimar, Vayovo vayas Hashem kasher diber ki chatas al Hashem lo shmat v'kolo, vayolachem adavar hazeh. Now Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana v'omer, Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana got involved with this, and he said, Tzedakah T'ramim Goy, v'chesed liyisrael u'le'umim chatos, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai l'talmidav, Mirin, divrei Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana midivrei u'midivreichem. Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana, ultimately, again, his words seem to be better than anyone else's, right? Ultimately, again, Lefi shu no sein tzedakah v'chesed liyisrael ula akum. So I'll say, here's what's interesting. Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana understands that lamaisa, that there is a value to the tzedakah and the chesed, not just of the Jews, but of the non-Jews as well. The Gemara says, Mechlal, Dehu nami amar, maihi, desanya amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, keshim shechatas mechaperes al Yisrael, kach tzedakah mechaperes al Mosol. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, the same way that a chatos ultimately again atones, carbon chatas atones for Klal Yisrael, so too again tzedakah atones for the nations of the world. So I will say, so let me just show you what's happening over here. This entire time, the way we were darshaning this pasuk was, what was the lashon over here? Tzedakah T'ramim Goy, v'chesed l'umim chatas. We're translating this as tzedakah will uplift the nation. The nation is a reference to Klal Yisrael. Klal Yisrael gives tzedakah, they're lifted up. V'chesed l'umim chatas, and chesed done by the nations of the world is a chatas. And the Gemara was showing how when the nations of the world do tzedakah, it's not really to help. If it's for ulterior motives, for arrogance, to make Klal Yisrael look bad, whatever it may be, but it's not really to help. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai comes along and he disagrees and he says, no, that's not true. That's not true. Even when the nations of the world do tzedakah, they get credit for that in the eyes of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How do you understand the phrase v'chesed l'umim b'chatos? It means that just like a carbon chatos provides atonement for Klal Yisrael, so too tzedakah provides atonement for the umos ha'olam. Incredible. Yochanan ben Zakkai, a totally different view. Meaning, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants all of his creations to be Baalei tzedakah. He wants all of his creations to be Baalei chesed. He wants all of humanity. He wants the community of humanity to look out for each other. Obviously, as Klal Yisrael, this is part of our DNA. This is part of who and what we are. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the same expectation of all of his children. I will say, sorry, I know we went a little bit quickly. Shkoyach, everyone. I'm wishing everyone a wonderful day and a good night of Shabbos.